All right, everybody, welcome back to the Dolphins Country Podcast. Today, we are going over everything that has happened in the last 48 hours. 2 days ago was the Dolphins and Steelers game. Feels like a while ago, considering everything that's happened since then. But let's get right into it. So the Dolphins get blown out on Monday Night Football by the Pittsburgh Steelers. No real surprise here. The Dolphins were technically still alive heading into the game, but they were basically eliminated at that point. This was a really interesting game to see, okay, have the Dolphins passed any tests whatsoever? Because they've had a boatload of opportunities in the past few years to pass these tests. If you go into a game against a team that's better than you on primetime late in the season, how do you perform against those teams? And they've had a boatload of opportunities, like I said, the last few years because they've been in primetime a lot these last few years. Much more than we're accustomed to. And this one was exactly like the other ones. Exactly like the Eagles game a couple years ago. Exactly like the Packers game in Lambeau last year. Following a 3-game win streak against Green Bay, we get smoked. Following a 3-game win streak heading into Philadelphia, we get smoked. And by the way, all those winning streaks were involved in just beating bad teams, and then your record is decent heading into that game, and then you get blown out against a team that's just better than you in cold weather against a playoff team. So exact same scenario was laid out here on Monday night. Dolphins this time had won 4 in a row. Again, largely beating all bad teams except for Buffalo. But after the Buffalo game, it was 3 backup quarterbacks and 3 teams that have already punted on the season, like I kept saying. And we all knew they would be 6-7 heading into this game. But this game, nonetheless, was still important to Miami to see, okay, have they passed any tests? Were they kind of built for this style of game? Because in the last few years, if the weather got cold, Kansas City, coldest game ever in Arrowhead, Lambeau last year on the very last day of November was frigid. How would they... They've looked awful in cold weather games in the past, basically is the point here. So did something change? The way the Dolphins have been playing the last month and a half, even though they've been beating bad teams, feels like they were more equipped to go on the road in the cold and play good football. And on paper, heading into the game, the Dolphins since Week 10 have averaged 192 yards a game on the ground. The Steelers since Week 10 have been the worst run defense, stopping the run. So on paper, this should have been a close game. Should have been very competitive. There was the Dolphins' strength the last month and a half has been the Steelers' weakness the last month and a half. But on paper, you might as well throw everything on paper out the window when you go into Pittsburgh, because in the first half, the Dolphins' defense was hitting. They were hitting hard. They were physical. The defense gave us a shot to win. The second half was just more of the same. It was kind of the role reversal last year of the Green Bay game, where that game was over in the first half. And in the second half, Tua and the offense had some garbage time touchdowns. This game was close at halftime, but it was over in the third quarter. The third quarter, the Steelers just boat raced us. And then in the fourth quarter, the last 11 minutes, the Dolphins got their garbage time touchdowns like they did in Lambeau last year. But those were all empty calories. This game was well over before the fourth quarter started. But basically, the Dolphins looked the exact same as they always do in primetime. And I always say this, and people hate it, but it's my lock of the year. Every time I see the Dolphins following a win streak against bad teams in primetime, against a team that's better than them on the road in cold, it's my mortal lock of the year. Fade the Dolphins in that spot every single time, and it's never failed me. So that one went about how we expected. The real crux of the game was Tua was bad. Tua was very, very bad. He usually is in cold weather games. I mean, he did have that awesome game in the snow against Buffalo in 22. His issue's been more wind, rain. We saw Tennessee in 2021. He was awful. We lost 34-3. We saw in Cleveland this year, weather was really bad. He was really bad. So when the weather's bad, he's bad. The weather was cold, but the conditions were fine. I mean, there was no rain, no snow, not a ton of wind. It was just a very cold game. It was 15 degrees, I believe, and it was just cold. And I don't know if, again, you can't beat a narrative. The narrative already is that the Dolphins and Tua specifically are not good in the cold, although it's not really just Tua. The Dolphins have been bad in the cold for years and years and years and years and years. But Tua does have his worst games in the cold. This was another really, really bad one, and there's no defending it. He was quite poor. The very first or second drive of the game, kind of got fooled by the flat defender, threw it right to him. It was a really bad ball. And again, you could blame McDaniel because this game was all about stick with the run. Last month and a half, that's how we've been winning games. Tua throws less, we win. Because that means we're running the ball more. But the Steelers knew that too. So they know, hey, if you take away the run, this team is very one-dimensional. And the Dolphins have been one-dimensional for the last month and a half. They've been winning games, and people are like, oh, we turned a new leaf. They've been a very one-dimensional team. The way that they're winning games, Tua wasn't playing well in the wins. He was throwing less, and they were just running the ball on these bad teams and playing solid defense, although, again, look at the quarterbacks they faced. And the Dolphins in the first half were playing solid defense again today, again on Monday. But Again, look at the quarterbacks that they faced. So this one got away from Miami, and again, the offense was to blame here. They just when they couldn't run the ball as effectively as they needed to heading into the game, they were turned into a one-dimensional football team who ran out of the building until Tua obviously had his garbage time numbers late. But that was that game. A lot more has happened since then, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it because it went exactly how I thought it would. And the Dolphins, by the way, are officially eliminated now at 6-8. If we didn't know that beforehand, but yeah, they these last 3 games are no longer meaningful as far as playoffs go because they are out. So because of that, the following day at the press conference, Mike McDaniel kind of suggests, "Hey, everything's on the table now." I didn't say because the season was over, but I mean at this point, this is how mostly these things go. Whenever you're eliminated, you got to look at every position. You mostly are going to play young guys because these games are no longer impactful to playoff positioning and all that other stuff. So they hinted yesterday at quarterback play was not good enough on Monday Night Football. So we'll look at everything, which means, we might have a benching on our hands. And then today, this morning, it is confirmed. They are benching Tua Tagovailoa for Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers, the rookie out of Texas, 7th-round draft pick. He will play these last 3 games, starting with Cincinnati, then Tampa Bay, and then at New England, assumingly. If he gets all 3 games, maybe they go to Zach Wilson. I don't know. But this is pretty standard. You want to see what you have in the young guy. However, benching Tua after that performance certainly will raise some questions. Is like, is this the end of it? Is this the end of the marriage? It's tough because there's a few avenues to look at this. I mean, some of Twitter has been saying, Mike McDaniel benching Tua is basically coaching suicide. He's basically saying, hey, it didn't work. Because remember, Mike McDaniel was brought in to fix Tua. And by benching Tua, is he waving the white flag and saying, hey, this is it, I'm done, I can't fix him? Or is this just because they're eliminated and you want to see what you have in your young guys? I don't know. McDaniel's words was that the quarterback was not good enough on Monday Night Football, and he just confirmed today in the press conference just about 20 minutes ago, Quinn Ewers gives us the best chance to win. So their mindset isn't even, let's see what the young guys have, we're going to still try and win games, even though that's just coach speak. I believe that this is all just, let's see what the young guys have. There's no point in playing. I mean, they just cut Matt Judon. They're eliminated. They want to see what the young linebackers have. So this is all about just seeing what the young guys have, and if Ewers is good, then certainly you have a question on your hands. But what does this mean for Tua? What does it mean for Mike McDaniel? Because benching Tua with 3 games, we've seen, again, it's not uncommon, but I do have to say this could be the end of it because we've seen this with Russell Wilson in Denver. They benched him with, I believe, 2 or 3 games to go when they were eliminated for Jarrett Stidham. The Raiders did it as well with Derek Carr. They benched him with like 2 or 3 games to go when they were, I believe, still mathematically alive, but they were basically eliminated just like the Dolphins. They were like 6-8. And they benched him for Jarrett Stidham as well, just like Denver did. They benched Derek Carr, that is. And that was the end of Derek Carr in Las Vegas. He went on to go to the Saints. And that was the end of Russell Wilson for Denver. He would go on to go to the Steelers. So benching guys with multiple games to go, you could look at it as, they're just eliminated and they're going to see what their young quarterback has and all the other young players have. Or you could look at it as you're benching a guy who's making a lot of money and you're basically saying, sayonara, we're going to move forward somewhere else. Because it's not like trying to think of another team who's the Bengals. The Bengals are eliminated. They're not benching Joe Burrow. They're not sitting Joe Burrow. They're still playing Joe Burrow. They're still trying to win games. So if the Dolphins were really trying to win games, you would think that they would go with their $250 million quarterback. But Mike McDaniel says that Quinn Ewers gives us the best chance to win. Do I agree with that? Obviously not. What I think this means is that they might be done with Tua as the quarterback of this team. So again, what does this mean? Long-winded way of getting here. There's 2 options here because I'm looking ahead to next season. I don't care about these last 3 games. It's basically preseason all over again. You're watching the young guys play. For next season, for Tua and Mike McDaniel, they have 2 options to go here. If they cut Tua, this would be the Russell Wilson model because Denver did it. They ate the largest dead cap hit at the time by cutting Russell Wilson like a year or 2 into that extension. Dolphins, same thing. If they cut Tua, they owe him $99.8 million in dead cap. That would be their dead cap charge against our cap space money. So $99 million in dead cap. It would be the largest dead cap charge. It would be the largest cap charge in the history of the NFL. That would be insane. First of all, they could do this. They could do a post-June 1st cut and split it up, which is what Denver did, I believe, with Russell Wilson. It would mean they would cut... It would cap $67.4 million against their 2026 cap, but it would go to $31.8 million in 2027. So they could split it up to $99.8 million in dead cap. You're not paying $100 million in dead cap in one offseason. You literally would not be able to build a roster if you were able to do that. So they could split it up. A post-June 1st cut would, again, it would mean you're eating $67 million in dead cap in 26 and then $31.4 million in dead cap money in 2027. This is the second year now of that. So they split it up just like in this case we would. They split it up into, okay, and I believe he was only owed like $80-something million in dead cap money. But I say only. That was at the time the largest dead cap money ever owed to a quarterback. This would take the cake by far. So this would be historic if they were to cut Tua in terms of cap charge against their salary. But again, if they were to do that, they would have a hard time building a roster for the next year if you were to eat all that dead cap money. Because then again, that goes against your cap. That's option number one. If they keep Tua, which would be financially much smarter, obviously, it would follow the Kirk Cousins model of, he'd be the most expensive backup quarterback in the NFL. Kirk Cousins right now is the most expensive backup in the NFL. He's making $40 million a year. Tua would be the new most expensive backup in the NFL. Both options, though, require... So Denver, what they did after Russell Wilson, they just drafted a rookie quarterback, Bo Nix. So you can kind of you're not paying your quarterback so much. They're still paying Russell Wilson more than they're paying Bo Nix right now. But it's fine. They're the number one seed in the NFC. They're 12-2. They've won 10 games in a row. They are paying nothing to the quarterback right now, Bo Nix, because they just drafted him. He's on a cheap rookie deal. And with Atlanta, with Kirk Cousins, they were able to, still keep him on their roster. He's still making a lot of money, but they're paying their starting quarterback nothing, Michael Penix. So they drafted Michael Penix, same draft class as Bo Nix, in the top 10. So either way you go here, if the Dolphins keep Tua, he's expensive. If they get rid of Tua, he's expensive. And regardless, you'd have to have a quarterback making next to nothing on a cheap rookie, I would assume rookie deal, but it could just be a cheap, it could be whatever. It could be, just a cheap contract, a cheap quarterback at this point. It could be Zach Wilson. It could be Quinn Ewers. I don't know who they're going to play next year, or again, these last 3 games, it looks like it'll be Quinn Ewers, but that would be the two options here. Or they run back Tua and he's the starter next year. But again, I'm following the model of if you bench a quarterback with 3 games to go, seen it happen with Derek Carr, seen it happen with Kirk Cousins, seen it happen with Russell Wilson, that probably means you're not going to be the starter next year on this franchise. Like I said, Derek Carr went on to go to the Saints. Russell Wilson would go on to go to the Steelers, and Kirk Cousins would stay there, but as a backup. Now he's starting again because Penix is hurt. But they could do one of those 3 options with Tua. And 2 of those options, the other quarterback moved on. And the third option with Kirk Cousins, he stayed as a backup. So, yes, Tua could theoretically be back on the team next year, but I don't think to be as a starter. It could be, but why would you bench him with 3 games to go? I don't know. Again, unless you just want to see what the young guys have. And if Ewers is terrible and if Wilson's terrible and they look at the whole thing, they're like, let's just bring back Tua for next year and start him. They could do that too. So there's more than 2 options here, but I'm just laying out the most viable options is just to look at comparisons of what other teams have done. Because, again, we could see it with Russell Wilson. The Jets also with Aaron Rodgers had to eat some dead cap money. But those are just the options that I'm comparing us to because in this scenario, you have to look at, okay, what did other teams do in this similar scenario here? Although it's not too similar because the Dolphins would be eating the largest dead cap money charge ever. And this contract right now appears to be the worst in the league. I mean, there's not a worse contract in football, at least at the quarterback position, than the Dolphins 201. The extension just kicked in. So now, again, I know there's an out after next year's contract, which is why I think it'd be smarter for them financially to keep him on the roster this year. And then you can easily offload him this time next year because there is no guaranteed money left on the contract after next year. So if you get rid of him, if you just cut him next year, you would only owe him about 13-something million, and it would not be anywhere near as bad as it is right now, which is like 67 million and then 32 million. That would be, like I said, I've already laid out the numbers. It's eating into your dead cap. It would be very, very difficult to build a roster that way, unless you just do what Denver did and you hit on a bunch of draft picks and have a bunch of guys on cheap rookie deals, like Bo Nix, Nick Benito. A lot of that defense is young and not making much money. So yeah, there's options to do it, but they're not in a good spot. They are in a really, really, really bad spot, and that would now bring me to McDaniel. So what do they do with McDaniel now? If this is the end of Tua, I would assume it's also the end of McDaniel. However, if you cut Tua and fire McDaniel, who wants this job right now? Like, who would want this job? You would basically be accepting another tank year. It's similar to what the Brian Flores situation was like about 6-7 years ago, where they brought in Flores and they were like, hey, we're tanking for a year. And we know how that went. So we know how that was handled. So I don't know. Do they want to do that again? Because if they do cut Tua and eat a bunch of dead cap, you would have to assume, unless they hit on a Bo Nix, for example, like Denver did, you would assume that next year would be a retooling year, a very, very rough year ahead as far as just eating dead money, playing a bunch of young guys, seeing what that season looks like. Probably won't be very good. We don't even know who the quarterback would be if they cut Tua. Like I said, it could be Ewers, it could be Wilson, it could be somebody on the roster, it could be somebody not on the roster right now. But you could possibly be expecting just a tank year. So what coach would want to sign up for that? Like, who wants to just be like, yeah, I'll tank for a year and then wait and get my... If you keep Tua and still fire McDaniel, what coach is wanting to sign up for one more year of Tua on that contract? I don't know what coach would want to take that job. I really don't. I mean, I know somebody will, but like, it's not a great job right now. This is not a very attractive job. So there is a world where I do still think McDaniel could stay, despite how bad this looks right now. I just think this will be like the safest option. It's like, well, let's run back one more year of Mike McDaniel. Let's give him a year to see what this, whoever quarterback it is. It could be Tua. It could be somebody else. Like I said, let's just see. It's easier than finding a new one and then possibly having a one-and-done head coach or whatever, just tanking a year and finding a gap head coach just to throw away a year with. I don't know. I think that there's still a real possibility that Mike McDaniel is still here next year. I wouldn't put it as a high possibility, but I think there is a chance. At this point, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen with McDaniel or Tua, but by McDaniel benching Tua, who he was brought in here to fix, it feels like he could just be going down with the ship with Tua, right? I mean, if Tua's gone, I would have to assume that McDaniel could follow him. Unless, McDaniel just has another year because no one else wants this job. And also, obviously, Stephen Ross likes Mike McDaniel. So it's going to be very interesting. These last 3 games are, like I said, meaningless, but kind of important. How it ends, if they go 2-1 these last 3 games and Ewers looks good and Mike McDaniel's like, hey, see, I can win with him. Maybe? I mean, that's even feels like a stretch, but does benching Tua right now, does that save McDaniel's job? Does it solidify him being fired? I don't know. I really don't know. I figured they would just rock with Mike McDaniel in 2 of these last 3 games, and we'll see what happens. Maybe they both get canned at the end of the year. But again, it seems like it's very financially irresponsible to get rid of Tua, just to cut him. Because they can't trade him. Realistically, they can't trade him. I mean, they could trade him, but they'd have to attach a pick next to it. No one's taking that contract on a trade. I'm just kind of ruling that option out because that would take so many hurdles for, like, what team is signing up for Tua's contract? Like, people are like, oh, you can do a 1-for-1, Tua for Kyler. Bad contract for bad contract. Kyler's contract is about to end. Tua's contract, the extension just kicked in. So I don't know. Again, you'd have to attach a pick, I believe, to get rid of Tua. If you're going to trade him anywhere, you would have to, like, what team is signing up for that contract? I don't know. It would be hard-pressed for me to find one, but that's where we're at right now with McDaniel, with Tua. These last 3 games, it's basically like preseason again. You're going to watch Ewers start. You're going to watch a lot of young linebackers. You're going to watch a lot of young guys who don't get much playing time, probably play a lot in these last 3 games, just to see what you have out of these young players. If they're any good heading into next year, that's everything's on the table. Like McDaniel said, that's his quote. Everything's on the table. You're going to be scouting these last 3 games, see what's going on. But for Tua, this is going to be something's going to happen this February or March, and we're first going to see whether or not McDaniel's going to be staying here or not, because that's, if you're going to fire a head coach, you're going to do it right at the end of the season to get a search out. So if they do that, we'll know first if McDaniel's still here or not, if they're running it back with him. Obviously, last year, we know right after the Jets game in Week 18, Stephen Ross had a press conference and said, yep, Greer's back, McDaniel's back. So you'll know after Week 18 whether or not people are back or whether or not going to be fired. On the following day is usually when firings happen. It's called Black Monday. That's when everyone gets fired. And, around the league, you'll see that's what happened with Brian Flores. He finished 8 of 9, winning 8 of 9, finishing 9 and 8, I believe, that year. Still ended up getting fired. And it was kind of a shocker at the time. But, yeah, we'll see what happens these last 3 games. McDaniel's job is on the line first. Those 3 games will dictate whether or not he stays or not, probably. Maybe he's already going to be gone. Maybe he's already going to be staying. I don't know. And then with Tua, we'll figure something out with that in February or March, whether or not they cut him, whether or not they trade him, which is really unlikely, or whether or not they say, yeah, we're going to keep him on our roster next year, but we're going to maybe look for another quarterback to possibly start. Who knows? Very expensive backup if that is the case. But that's all for this podcast. Rough game on Monday Night Football against the Steelers. Predictable game, because that's how they always look at Monday Night Football games, in cold against good teams. But yeah, that's pretty much where we're at right now. Bengals game this Sunday. I'm really bummed we're not going to ever get Tua versus Joe Burrow. They had maybe the greatest game of all time in college football in 2019 with number 1 LSU and number 2 Alabama. They may just never play in the NFL against each other. It's either Burrow's hurt or Tua's hurt. In this case, they're actually both healthy at the same time. Burrow rushed back to play, and then it's not even Burrow who's going to miss the game. It's going to be Tua who misses the game because he gets benched. So, shocker there. But that's what we have to look forward to these last 3 games. Cincinnati at home, Tampa Bay at home, and then at New England with possible 1 seed or possible AFC East on the line. Maybe we can play spoiler. Obviously, I'm hoping for losses. I want to get in the top 10 of that draft, but I've been hoping for losses for the last month, and they've just been beating bad teams. So, we'll see what happens. Right now, we're picking 11th. I'd love to finish in the top 10 and get as high a draft pick as we can and get a blue chipper in the building, but we'll see what happens there. Last 3 games, we'll be scouting. We'll be seeing what happens. But as for this podcast, we will be back sometime probably during or probably after the Bengals game, unless there's more news that happens before the Bengals game. Then we'll be rushing on to talk about it. But A lot happened in the last 48, 72 hours for the Dolphins. Until next time, go Dolphins.